well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. You may hear a little more Mario the Rooster than normal. I got them new housing over the weekend after the latest raccoon attack. So Mario and the two hens are now living in a chicken tractor in the front yard. So they're a little bit closer to the studio. And I think they're going to like it, but it is definitely a learning curve. And Mario is not particularly happy. So a lot of crowing today. He is making his displeasure known. We're going to be talking with Mark Walters from Armed American Radio here in just a moment or two. A lot of stuff to talk about, including the attempted attack on the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday night. Supreme Court releasing its orders on Monday morning, and once again, no news on the hardware cases that have been pending in conference. I think if they get relisted, I think Costas Moros from the Second Amendment Foundation said this will be the 14th conference for Duncan and I believe Gators Custom Guns versus Washington, the Magban cases. Then you've got Viramontes versus Cook County. You've got Nagar versus Lamont. Those are the hardware ban case. I believe there might be one other gun ban case out there as well. And again, we don't really know what the Supreme Court is holding on to these cases for, unless they are perhaps waiting for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals to release its decision in ANJRPC versus Platkin, which is expected to create a circuit court split regarding magazine bans and bans on so-called assault weapons. The court doesn't have to wait, though, for that split to develop. They could take up a hardware ban case right now, and hopefully they will. Hopefully this is not going to result in, I think Costas actually used the word snope as a verb today. Hopefully this is not going to result in another snoping of Duncan and these bans on so-called assault weapons. But I think that is a legit concern that everybody has after watching Snope go through 15 conferences last year, along with Ocean State Tactical versus Nerona, the challenge to Rhode Island's magazine ban. And then, again, we got that denial of cert after months and months. Justice Brett Kavanaugh saying, well, we think we're going to, there's a good chance we're going to consider one of these cases in the next term or two. We're not saying that Maryland's law is okay. We're not saying Rhode Island's law is okay. We're just allowing it to stay in effect. I think a lot of us are concerned that we are about to watch a sequel of that happen at the court this year. But let's talk about it with Mark Walters from Armed American Radio. Take a look. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the program. Always enjoy our Mondays with Mark. Like I said in the introduction today, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But let's start with the Supreme Court, where once again, nothing happened in the orders released on Monday morning. We've still got these gun bans. We got these magazine ban cases that have been heard in conference. I think we're getting ready for the 14th time. And then you've got these other cases that the Supreme Court hasn't done anything with. They haven't relisted them for conference, but they're just still out there dealing with sales bans, carry bans for adults under the age of 21. We kind of forget about those cases because we don't see them on the court's calendar, but the court hasn't done anything to dispose of those cases either. Are you becoming more optimistic or less optimistic as time goes on and another week goes by and we don't see anything coming from the Supreme Court?
Well, let's say trepidatious.
Okay.
I'm very disappointed in what the Supreme Court has allowed to happen, and you're living proof of that right now in Virginia, because that could have been put to bed a long time ago, or at least part of it could have been put to bed, and that being the most important part, and that's gun bans, okay? Mm-hmm. And here's why. Because the Supreme Court had to know that this was going to happen. They had to know this was going to happen when they refused that Fourth Circuit Snopes later the Brown case that we've talked about almost ad nauseum in Maryland. It never stops where we think it is. And what I mean by that is we watched the creep in California for year after year after year. We saw it happen, and it rolls across the country, right? And it's doing that right now. Now, we expect that behind the blue wall. Now we talk purple wall, and I do want to touch on Georgia being purple in just a minute. because of a poll that Mr. Gottlieb sent me that ties into this conversation. It's all tied together. But look at what happened in New York. Look what happened in California. California tries to be outdone by New York. Now we've got Spanberger on steroids trying to outdo New York and California together. The Supreme Court knew that and sat on these cases. What did the Snopes case sit for, Cam? 14, I think it was a
15.
record 15 conferences after it was GVR'd, and then they refused to take the case. Now, I had the opportunity to talk with the Attorney General of the United States of America at the NRA convention a week and a half ago, and asked him about that. And he was right there with me on that, because we possess now the benefit of hindsight. It's easy to see what happened in the rearview mirror in high definition vision, and what them taking that case. We likely would have had a decision on that case already, or at least coming up in the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think we would have gotten a decision. If they had granted cert, oral arguments would have been held last fall. Yeah, you're right. We would.
We'd be seeing it now.
Yeah.
It'd be coming out. In a case like that, experience tells us that would probably be because it's one of the hottest cases they would be taking, dealing with a fundamental right, of course. That would probably be in June. And that's right around the corner, brother.
Yep.
And a lot of what's happening in Virginia would have been put to bed. Now, you talk about it not stopping in Virginia, right? We're pushing membership in VCDL right now because as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, we're all Virginians. Why? I don't live in Virginia. You do. But guess what they want for my state? And evidence of that is Tim Kaine and Mark Warner have already introduced your gun control and added to it on steroids in the United States Senate. And they're calling it a Virginia Gun Safety Act that they want to foist on the rest of us, that none of us want. Now, why is that dangerous? And what does that have to do with a text message that I got from Alan Gottlieb? And I'll pull this up and read this to our viewers right now and to our listeners. Alan sent me this on Saturday. In the race for governor, former Democratic mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, wins against Brad Raffensperger, Rick Jackson, or Burt Jones, one of whom will likely be the Republican candidate. Bottoms wins 49% of the vote against Jones, 43%, the polls show, and she wins by the same margin against Jackson. Against Raffensperger, Bottoms comes out on top with 46% of the vote to his 44%. Why is that important? Because they're desperately trying to turn Georgia purple. They've been telling us it's purple. What do you think will happen if, in fact, Keisha Lance Bottoms, which I don't believe is going to happen in this state, it's way too early to tell, but what do you think would happen if somehow the Georgia House of Representatives and Senate flips with a Keisha Lance Bottom? We'd be looking at Virginia on steroids here because she's going to try to outdo Virginia.
Yeah.
This is the danger of where we are and why these cases, when they sit at SCOTUS for as long as they are, just wallowing along in nothing in conference, they've got to get off their duffs and put a stop to this. And conversely, we're in a very unique position right now to be able to put a final nail in the coffin of all this nonsense from the Democrats if the court will take a couple of these cases before them and, combined with what the DOJ is doing in the Civil Rights Division and going after the states. Trump has reissued his directive yet again to go after these. You've got Representative Clyde introducing legislation that is going to put a stop to everything and wipe out the Biden era gun controls. We've got to take advantage of where we are. And then now what do we have? A looming midterm coming upon us. Iran and everything behind that. I don't care how you slice it and how much you love Trump. His poll numbers are the lowest they've ever been in both terms right now. We have issues, and the court is the only thing we have to fall back on right now, particularly you in Virginia. That's my long-winded second cup of blackout coffee response today. It angers me, frankly. So there's the trepidation, I guess.
Yeah, I know. And I think that trepidation is well-founded. And I hadn't seen that poll that Alan sent you, but this is what I've been saying for a while now. If you think you live in a safe red state, you might not, right? And you look at Georgia. Georgia already has 2 Democrat senators. So the idea of a Democrat winning, another statewide election for governor this time around, it's not inconceivable.
Right.
We need to start acting like this. And I'll tell you, in Virginia, again, we can look back at the 2025 elections where Spanberger won. Democrats won every statewide office. They got a super majority in the House of Delegates. There were a lot of factors at play, including, I think, President Trump's popularity or the lack thereof in Virginia. We can talk about the Republican candidates, particularly at the statewide level, and the flawed campaigns that they ran. Winston Rosales did not really talk about
Mm-hmm.
guns, even though that was a big part of her campaign when she was running for lieutenant governor. And that allowed Abigail Spanberger, by the way, to not talk a lot about gun control, even though she was endorsed by Moms Demand Action and she supported a gun ban. The Sears campaign did not make that an issue. Anyway, my point is, regardless of the flaws of a particular candidate, regardless of all of the other issues that are out there, this is a challenging environment for even the best candidates. And we are going to have to be involved, I think, in these elections more so than just getting up and voting on election day.
Yeah, agreed.
We have to be very active. And this is, find a candidate that you like, find a candidate that's at least good on your issues, and help them out. Do what you can, volunteer, knock on doors, because this really is an all hands on deck election. You put it very well. Any state that flips this November is going to try to outdo what Governor Spanberger and Democrats did in Virginia, right? And we've seen, 13 different pieces of gun control legislation passed in one session in Virginia. Mm-hmm. This isn't where they're playing it safe. They're okay. Well, maybe we'll come up with one or two priorities and we'll come back. No, they want to throw as much on the table as they can. Strike while the iron is hot, right? They know that these majorities are not going to last forever. You look at the redistricting referendum in Virginia. Spanberger won election last November by 15 points. This redistricting won by 3. So already there's a lot of buyer's remorse in Virginia. And I don't think that the Democrat majority is permanent, although they might try to make it a permanent majority.
But the damage that they're going to do now while they have the majority is going to be untold. And, there's some consistencies here when you look at Virginia and when you look at what's going on in Georgia right now. Thank you for reminding me that we have John Ossoff and Warnock here. Thank me for that one later, right? But there's some similarities here. Winsome Sears, as much as I loved her and I loved her message, Winsome Sears was not the best candidate. How did Warnock walk in? Herschel Walker was not the best candidate. It's that simple. Now, I would love to have seen Brian Kemp take on Ossoff. He would have cleaned his clock here in the state. There's no question. But he's not. All right. When you look at the governor's race in the state of Georgia right now, there's an eternity between now and then. We've got to go through the primaries. It's going to be bruising. Republicans will coalesce around the winner, whoever that may be. Trump will come in and lend his support because he has to. Can you imagine Trump supporting Raffensperger after everything that happened? That's this crazy world that we live in right now. But from a political standpoint, that's likely going to occur. It's imperative that we don't lose the state. Let me flip over to Arizona. Prime example. Arizona, the most gun-friendly state in the nation, which I could debate all day long, by the way, because I don't think it is. They have great gun laws, don't get me wrong, and I love Arizona. I consider it my second home. But they've got a very slim majority, and they've got a Democrat in office. Quang Nguyen, the House Judiciary Chair in Arizona, shreds dozens of anti-gun bills every single session. In his career, he has shredded over 100. I spoke to him just a few days ago. I've sat in his office. I've watched him work on the floor. It doesn't matter. When the Democrats get even closer, they get more emboldened. And when you look at what Warner and Kane are doing, ask yourself, why are they doing this? Because they feel emboldened right now. They're setting up a loss by the Republicans in the midterm, what they're hoping will happen, and gearing up for a hopeful Democratic candidate to win the election in 2028. That's why they're doing this right now in Trump's term. They know it doesn't stand a chance in the House or Senate right now under Republican control. But come January, after the November elections, this is what they're setting themselves up for. And Ryan Petty, Parkland dad, who you and I know very well, sits on the board with us over at the Citizens Committee, has made it clear time after time. The left will never stop. They are playing the long game, and we had better start playing it, or we're going to lose it. Sad. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and part and parcel of that is to use, any high profile shooting that they can to call for gun control. We've obviously seen this in the wake of the attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday. I took a part of Philadelphia Inquirer op-ed. This was from the editorial board, talking about how, this is a moment for Trump to bring the country together by demanding a bunch of gun control laws that are already in place in California, by the way, none of which stopped this guy from acquiring the shotgun and the pistol that was described, by the way, as an arsenal by the New York Post. There is not a gun control law that you could put on the books
Right.
that would have prevented this from happening, right? I mean, the guy lived in California, traveled to D.C., two of the most gun control jurisdictions in the nation. And yet, Mark, again, I mean, there's no shortage of anti-gun politicians, anti-gun media figures who are using this to push the idea that your rights and my rights and our listeners' rights need to be curtailed in the name of safety.
Yeah, one of the questions that viewers, if you ever want to put somebody down quick when it comes to a question, if you ever want to checkmate them, agree with them. Say, you know what, you're right. We do need another law. Which one is it? Because if you can give me that one law that would have stopped this particular crime or this guy in California, who, by the way, we were reminded by A.W.R. Hawkins on Armed American Radio last night following your segment, that he went through every single one of California's gun controls.
Yep.
Waiting periods, magazine, whatever. And the guy shows up in D.C., in the other most gun-controlled city in the country, okay? So when you consider all of this kind of in total, when you've got somebody that's willing to do that, agree with them if you're in an argument. Say, you know what, you're right. And I'm just wondering, because I can't figure it out, and I do this for a living. What is that one law you want that will stop it? Because if you can tell me what it is, I'm on board with you, brother or sister. They'll look at you like a deer in the headlights because there is no law and they can never name one. And if they do, it's never enough. It's always something else. It's something else. It's something else. They hem and they haw because no laws will stop these people who are determined to do things. We already know that, and any honest American already gets that as well. It doesn't matter because this is bigger than their one law. This ultimate goal, this is the means justifying the end. What's the end here? Means is the gun control that they keep putting in on steroids, just like Tim Kaine and Warner. What's the end? The end is ultimate confiscation of your firearms. Don't believe me? See Connecticut. And I could go on and on and on and on.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And as you say, they're very good at playing the long game, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we can look back at, 50 years ago, their goal was to ban handguns, right? Now they're arguing in court briefs that actually handguns are the only guns protected by the Second Amendment, that every other
unless they can be fully automated. Right? Unless they can be fully automated. Let's be careful there.
That's true, right? There may be revolvers are the only firearms protected by the Second Amendment.
Well, they can be converted too. Believe me, that's coming next. Okay.
Yeah. But they will use whatever argument they can at the time, as long as it gets them one step closer to their agenda. It doesn't matter if they contradict themselves. It doesn't matter if they if there's no logic to their position. They're very transactional in that regard, right? They'll use the best argument available to them at the time to advance their overall agenda. And as you say, the overall agenda is the eradication of the right to keep and bear arms. Right. It is an end to gun ownership. That's the law that they want to put in place, right? Well, if nobody can buy a gun, if no guns are around, well, that's the law that's going to stop something like what happened last weekend.
Yeah, so ask yourself this question. It's a good segue here, ladies and gentlemen, and we've talked about this for years and years and years, but it gets more important as the days, weeks, months, and years go by. When you lay your head down on your pillow tonight, ask yourself this question. Put the sound machine on, put the fan on, do whatever you need to do. Curl up with your dog, your husband, your wife, I don't care, and think to yourself, what is it about their agenda that requires my disarmament? Think about that. The answer will come to you. You don't need me. You don't need Cam to tell you about it. It will come to you. It's control. When you're disarmed, they have 100% control over you. Hence why we have a Second Amendment, why our founders and their vision was so brilliant, and why they want to put a stop to it. And I do want to point out something else that Ryan Petty said last night that I kind of expanded on. When we was talking about the political division in the country last night, I made it pretty clear that is obviously very true. The left has divorced you a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen. They are not coming back. They are not interested in holding hands with you and singing Kumbaya. They want your guns. They're never going to stop. They're going to keep going. It's not just that. They want the country. See James Carville and these crazy ideas. He's dropping F-bombs all over the place, telling Democrats, just get off your tails and do it. From day one, he said this last week on national television, from day one, make D.C. a state, make Puerto Rico a state, pack the Supreme Court, nuke the filibuster, and put the Republicans out of business permanently. And if they do that and disarm you, and don't think they won't, and disarm you, you are at their mercy. Now, here's the problem. The two political ideas in this country right now are incompatible with each other. 100% mutually exclusive of one another. What does that mean in the long run? I don't know, but it is not a good place to be, because it used to be we could agree to disagree in this country, and that was the way the system was built. And if you lost the argument, you came back and you fought another day, and you got a new president, and that president picked their Supreme Court. Not now. Now they want to pack the court because their ideology is more important. Yours sucks. And guess what? We want total control. We're not interested in debate. We're not interested in the founding principles of this nation. We want control. So when you know that these two political ideas are incompatible with one another and they want your guns, you had better start getting off your duff and asking yourself why, folks. The answer will come to you.
Mark Walters, I'm going to leave it there. I could get into a hours-long political discussion based on just what you said.
Yeah.
I will. I don't disagree with anything you said. I will say, and I'll just leave it as my final thought. The unaffiliated voters are the largest voting bloc in the country. And when they figure out how to coalesce behind a couple of ideas and start to, exploit that position, maybe we will see some, return to sanity. But I'm not confident. I'm about as confident in that happening as I am the Supreme Court taking a hardware case this term.
Trepidation is the word of the day today.
There you go. All right. Tell folks how they can find you on the Daily Defense and then the Big Sunday Monster Cast.
Yeah, and let me thank you, too, with your audience here for last night participating. 17-year anniversary on Armed American Radio last night. We begin 18 years today, and you've been a major player there. We appreciate all of your help and support over all the years. Thank you for lending us your wit and wisdom. It's armedamericanradio.com or .org. Take your pick. We own them both. Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 Eastern. Sundays, 8 to 11 Eastern. You can do the math. Unless you're a liberal, you probably need a calculator. Figure out the time zones where you live.
Mark, as always, man, and hey, congratulations again on 17 years. That is quite the accomplishment. I always love hanging out with you on the show, whether
Likewise.
it's events or a Sunday night. I look forward to doing this again very, very soon. And again, man, happy anniversary.
You bet. Thanks, Cam. Always a pleasure.
And thanks once again to Mark for joining us on the program. And, it completely slipped my mind, but April 16th was the 23rd anniversary of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I guess that's how you count it, right? 2004 was the year we signed on, and still going strong after all those years. So thank you for all of your continued support for Bearing Arms Cam & Company. All right, let's turn our attention now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a case out of Chicago. This was big news Saturday morning. It was quickly eclipsed by what happened in Washington, D.C. on Saturday night. But you had shooting, two Chicago police officers shot, one of them fatally, in a hospital by somebody that they had taken into custody, allegedly involved in an armed robbery Saturday morning. They took 26-year-old Alfonso Talley to a Swedish Covenant Hospital after he was arrested. He complained he needed medical attention, so they take him there. Somehow, we still don't know how, but somehow he was able to get a hold of a gun. He may have had it with him. According to police, there was a third firearm found at the scene outside of the officer's weapons. So it may be that Talley smuggled a gun up in his nether regions. We don't really know. But somehow he got a hold of a gun, shot and killed a 10-year Chicago Police Department veteran, John Bartholomew, and seriously wounded Bartholomew's partner, who is currently in critical condition. I don't know that his partner's name has been released by police yet. According to CWB Chicago, Talley is the fifth person accused of killing or trying to kill someone in Chicago this year while out on felony pretrial release. And the website says, since they began tracking such data in 2020, people on pretrial release have been charged with murdering 2 Chicago police officers, 1 Chicago firefighter, and trying to murder 30 Chicago cops. That's in addition to the non-law enforcement victims of these individuals. So Talley, as I mentioned, he's 26 years old. He's a 7-time felon who had absconded from probation, was out on parole, and has received so many, I won't call them lucky breaks because there's no luck involved here. so many intentional breaks from the Illinois criminal justice system. Talley has been wanted since March 11th, when he did not show up in court for hearings on armed carjacking and armed robbery. The judge in that case, Judge John Like, had released Talley onto electronic monitoring despite his lengthy criminal history and despite his history of not showing up for court hearings. He's also in violation for parole that he is currently serving for possessing a stolen motor vehicle as well as aggravated battery of correctional officers at the Cook County Jail. So his criminal history dates back to November 2017 when he pled guilty to 4 counts of armed robbery. He got 4 7-year sentences served concurrently, right? So all of them served at the same time, but 7 years in 2017. By July of 2021, he was already out. So, in Illinois, by the way, if you don't assault a correctional officer while behind bars, if you don't, stab an inmate, you basically get a day knocked off your sentence for every day that you served. So a 10-year sentence becomes a 5-year sentence. A 5-year sentence becomes a 2.5-year sentence. A 7-year sentence, which is what Mr. Talley received in 2017, becomes a 3.5-year sentence. So 4 years later, July of 2021, he's out. He's caught with a gun, charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm while on parole. A grand jury actually indicts him for armed habitual criminal, which would have increased the punishment that he received for having that gun. And again, remember, this is a violent felon. This isn't somebody who, can't possess a gun because he wrote a bad check or even, because he had a DUI, right? Armed robbery. That was the crime that he committed that prohibited him from owning a firearm. So then he's charged with being a felon in possession. Grand jury says, you know what? Let's add armed habitual offender to that. Then Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, remember her? So let's not do that. And she allowed Talley to plead guilty to being a felon in possession of a firearm. 3-year sentence, 1.5-year sentence, right? Well, less than a year after he entered that plea, he was already out again. So apparently he got some credit for the time that he spent behind bars awaiting trial. He was arrested by Illinois State Police troopers after leading them on a lengthy chase in a stolen car. He remained in jail for a year after state troopers arrested him, but he did pick up that felony for attacking Cook County correctional officers. And then Judge John Like denied a state petition to keep holding Talley in jail and released him on electronic monitoring in the fall of 2004. Within 3 months, he's charged with misdemeanor domestic battery, and then he stopped showing up for his felony cases. So Like signs an arrest warrant last February 2025. Police find him in April, but only after he allegedly carjacked a woman at gunpoint and then was accused of robbing another man at gunpoint as well. Another judge, Judge Luciano Pacini Jr., ordered Talley jailed as a public safety threat. Also jailed him on the failure to appear warrant that Judge Like had signed several months earlier. But less than 6 months later, Judge Like agrees to release Talley on electronic monitoring once again. This guy failed to show up for hearings in Judge Like's courtroom, and yet Judge Like says, nah, what's the big deal? Strap a monitor on his ankle. Let him go. So he's got multiple pending cases before him at this point, right? Armed carjacking, armed robbery, stolen vehicle, assaulting corrections officer. And he asks Judge Like, just a couple weeks after he's put on electronic monitoring, hey, can I leave the home for longer than what, you've told me I can leave the home? We want to be able to be away from his home between 5 and 11 hours every day. And then later that month, the judge actually said, okay, you can be gone between 7 and 16.5 hours a day, supposedly so he could go to school, right? March 11th, Talley doesn't show up for court. During that hearing, an officer from the Pretrial Services Division tells the judge, hey, we got an alert that Talley left home without permission a couple days ago, March the 8th, and he didn't come back until the following day. And even though the judge had said, yeah, 16 hours a day, no problem. That was like during the weekday, right? Not on the weekends. So he didn't abide by Judge Lake's terms of pre-release. And then after he got back home on March the 9th, his monitoring device died because he hadn't charged it. And he didn't charge it. So then Judge Lake signs an arrest warrant. Yeah. But had Lake simply said, last December, Mr. Talley, you have a history of not showing up when we let you out ahead of trial. So no, we're not going to release you on electronic monitoring again. Oh, by the way, earlier this year, I guess he did end up taking a plea deal to the charges of the stolen car and assaulting the correctional officer. And because he got credit for time served while he was at home, while he was out of the streets with an ankle monitor, that counts as time served while you're awaiting trial. So it basically that was wiped clean because of the amount of time that he spent behind bars awaiting trial and then out on electronic monitoring. Bottom line is, if the criminal justice system actually treated violent crime seriously in Illinois, these Chicago police officers would not have been shot Saturday morning. John Bartholomew would not have lost his life Saturday morning because the guy who's accused of shooting those officers would have been in prison. But while the Democrats in control of the Illinois legislature continually make it more difficult to exercise our Second Amendment rights, criminalizing basic aspects of the right to keep and bear arms, violent offenders keep getting slaps on the wrist. They keep getting electronic monitors put on their ankle. And when they let that battery die, when they cut them off, oftentimes nothing happens. Their probation is extended. They're given a stern talking to. For nearly a decade, Alfonso Talley has been accused of and been convicted of committing violent offenses. And each and every time, prosecutors or a judge has cut him a break. And now, one officer's fighting for his life, and another's life was tragically cut short. Yes, the man who pulled the trigger is the man responsible for those deaths. But a functional criminal justice system would not have allowed that individual to be out on the streets in the first place. And we don't have that in Illinois. Thanks again to the Democrat majorities in the state. Now, on to today's armed citizen story. Excuse me, I got to turn off my phone here. I should have remembered to do that before we got started. All right, on to today's armed citizen story. And this one, I think there's probably some more information to be known, but we do have a good headline for you here. This was from Nashville, Tennessee. A DoorDash driver shot, returns fire, killing carjacking suspect at Berry Hill Walgreens. And again, this was over the weekend. It was on Saturday, just before 1 p.m. According to Metro Nashville Police Department PIO Don Aaron, the preliminary investigation into the shooting shows that the DoorDash delivery driver pulled into the Walgreens parking lot before walking over to a Chick-fil-A to pick up an order. He's coming back to his car. He's approached by a guy with a gun who was trying to carjack him. Aaron said the alleged carjacker got into the DoorDasher's car. The DoorDasher pulled out a gun as well. The suspect then shot the DoorDasher, hitting him in the leg. The DoorDasher returned fire, fatally shooting the suspect as the suspect was attempting to drive away from the scene. The DoorDasher taken to a local hospital to be treated. He is expected to be okay. Aaron said the investigation is ongoing, did not tell media if a charge would be filed against the DoorDash driver. I would be shocked if they were. You know, even if you say, okay, well, the carjacker was trying to drive away. He'd already shot the driver once, right? You've got a reasonable belief that this guy could point his gun out the window shoot at you again as he's trying to drive away, you got a reasonable belief that he could turn that car around and try to run you over. I would say at that point, after you've been shot, it would be incredibly unreasonable to believe that this individual means you no further harm. So my guess is that this is going to be ruled a justified shooting. You know, we talk a lot, too, about rideshare drivers and the policies of Uber and Lyft that do not allow drivers to be armed, even when they're in their own vehicle, even if they can lawfully carry a firearm. If you are driving for one of those rideshare companies and you get carjacked and you pull out a gun in self-defense, you may save your life, but you've lost your ability to drive for that company forevermore. I don't know if DoorDash has the same policy. And, of course, a lot of these drivers they'll drive for Uber and Lyft, or they'll do, Uber Eats and Uber. So this guy may have been a DoorDash driver, but may also been a rideshare driver. Don't know all of the details. And again, I'm not aware of DoorDash's policy regarding armed drivers, but I hate those policies. They put drivers at risk. And, I've talked to a number of drivers over the years who have had to use a firearm in self-defense. They've lost, again, that ability to serve as a contractor. I think it's just the stupidest policy imaginable. And I try not to use those companies. It's pretty easy when I'm, here around Farmville because they don't really exist. But even when I have to go to like Washington, D.C. or someplace like that, I really try hard not to use Uber or Lyft because of those policies. And I hope that DoorDash is going to allow this driver to continue making some money, because losing your job so that you didn't lose your life, again, that seems pretty egregious to me. On to today's good deed of the day. In the place at the right time, will enable to do the right thing. A good Samaritan in Kansas who helped save two individuals who were in a plane crash. A small plane went down. I guess this was last Thursday in Neosho County, Kansas. It was a fixed-wing single-engine aircraft piloted by a guy out of South Carolina, and it lost its engine function near the town of Chanute. And so the pilot tried to land at the Chanute airport, but there was cloud cover. He missed the approach and had to divert to a nearby field. As he's coming down, plane goes into a nosedive. It actually landed and flipped over on its top and then started to slide. Managed to flip back upright while it was sliding, but it's still, barreling through this field. There was a road nearby, US 169. I don't know how heavily trafficked it is, but there was a guy driving down the road, saw what happened, and he actually drove out into the field and used his truck to stop the plane. According to the Hayes Post, a gust of wind caught the parachute, which I guess was on the rear of the plane, which caused the plane to flip over the truck, and then it got dragged westbound back over the road before coming to rest in a row of trees. Local EMS workers transported the pilot and a passenger to the Neosho Memorial Regional Medical Center. At last report, no word on the extent of their injuries, but this could potentially have been even worse were it not for the actions of the Good Samaritan willing to put his own life and certainly his vehicle at risk, trying to stop that plane from skidding any further. And so in the right place at the right time, willing able to do the right thing. We thank that anonymous Good Samaritan for their very good deed. And that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you, as always, for being a part of the program. Looking forward to seeing you back here again tomorrow. Be sure to check out BearingArms.com. Today, we are keeping you up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information. I will say things are top-heavy with the attempted assassination on Saturday night. That is generating a lot of news stories, sucking up a lot of oxygen. But we do have other armed citizen stories for you. Taking a look at legislation from around the country. So again, be sure to check out BearingArms.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. But until then, be well, be safe, and be free.